Greetings, nice to share with you once again. Previous video we looked at we are looking at the fourth main subtopic, which is how to design your research, how to come up to create a research design, and actually it is the fifth, and it's what we are still looking at. So previous video we concluded when we are looking on the fourth step in this, but now in this video we're going to continue to the fifth step, which is planning your data collection procedures. So that's what you're going to look at in this video. So just as well as deciding on your methods, you need to plan exactly how you will use these methods to collect data that is consistent, accurate, and unbiased. So planning systematic procedures is especially important in quantitative research, where you need to precisely define your variables and ensure your measurements are reliable and valid. Because for quantitative research, before you actually start coming up with anything, you should know the variables you're going to work with. So then some variables like height or age can be easily measured, but often you will be dealing with more abstract concepts like satisfaction, anxiety, competence, like which cannot be easily measured. So then at that point you will need to this is the point where we come to something known as operationalization. So operationalization means turning these fancy ideas into measurable indicators, like things like satisfaction, anxiety, and competence, turning them into measurable indicators. So that process is what we call operationalization. So if you're using observations, which events or actions will you count? For example, we can say to measure students' participation in an online course, you could record the number of times the students ask and answer questions. And if you're using surveys, which questions will you ask and what range of responses will be offered? So things like that. And if you're measuring, like for example, like we've said, when you're to measure the student's participation, it is something that can be measurable, so you know how to deal with that. You can look at how frequently students ask and answer questions. And but now if it comes to measuring teachers' satisfaction with online learning tools, so here you could create a questionnaire with a 5-point rating scale, like you're making their satisfaction. Now this like your satisfaction is something that cannot be measured, just like age or what, but we can come up with a way of measuring it. Like for example, if you want to see teachers' satisfaction with online learning tools, then we can create a questionnaire with a 5-point rating scale, whereby I know in your experience with phone apps, you've come across things of rating, like 5-star, like rating. Those apps are rated like on Play Store. So normally an app tells you to rate it. So that is one way, using such a scale, like they give you 5 points, like to either choose 1 or 2, 3, 4, 5. So depending on how it is, like how satisfactory it has been with you. So that kind of rating can be used to measure satisfaction. So it is what we are trying to see, that you can use such a rating scale in a questionnaire of that kind to see or to measure how teachers are satisfied with the online teaching tools. So you may also choose to use or adapt existing materials designed to measure the concept you're interested in. For example, questionnaires or inventories whose reliability and validity has been established. Uh, so when we talk of reliability and validity, reliability simply means your results can be consistently reproduced, while validity means that you're actually measuring the concept you're interested in. So does your measure capture the same concept consistently over time? Does it produce the same results in different contexts? If so, then it is reliable. And then does all like do all questions measure the exact concept? If so, then it is reliable. So when it comes to validity, do your measurement materials test all the aspects of the concept? Does it correlate with different measures of the same concept? If it does, then it is valid. So for valid and reliable results, your measurement materials should be thoroughly researched and carefully designed. Like, plan your procedures to make sure you carry out the same steps in the same way for each participant. And if you're developing a new questionnaire or other instruments to measure a specific concept, when I talk of instruments, I'm meaning research instruments. Like a questionnaire is one. You can use a questionnaire like ANA, or like things like you can use to collect data. Like a questionnaire can be used to collect data. You can have survey forms. Those are the instruments I mean when I say instruments. So if you're developing a questionnaire, it is an instrument, or any other form of of instrument. Does it measure a specific concept? So to find out, you can run a pilot study, and this will allow you to check its validity, the validity of the instrument, and reliability in advance before you can go on to use it. Because as you're looking at your data collecting procedures, you have to choose which instruments you will use. So you have to make sure that actually these instruments will be of good help to you. So when we look at sampling procedures, like sampling procedures, now let's say you've got the methods for collecting the data, like we've seen how you can check like your instruments. If you've chosen a questionnaire, if you've chosen, let's say, a survey form, something like that. So like, because we've looked at measures like variables that can be measured, and those that cannot be measured, there is still, you can operationalize them to make them measurable. So having looked at how we will measure your variables, then you look at how the methods you use to collect data, like the instruments. Will you use questionnaires? How will those questionnaires be in order to bring out something, in order for them to be reliable and valid, just as we've been observing? So something like that. So meaning, having come up with an instrument that we think that will actually help you collect the data in the field, then you consider your sampling procedures. So as well as choosing an appropriate sampling method, you need a concrete plan for how you will actually contact and recruit your selected sample. So that means making decisions about things like how many participants do you need for an adequate sample size, what inclusion and exclusion criteria would you use to identify eligible participants, and then how will you contact your sample, by email, online, by phone, or in person. So sampling, like we previous video, we looked at what sampling is and the population. So I hope when I talk about sampling and then the outcome, like getting the participants, you get participants or a sample size which is which is um, appropriate according to your population, like that is representative of your population. So if you're using a probability sampling method, it is important that everyone who is randomly selected actually participates in the study. And how will you ensure a high response rate? So you have to look at things like that. And if you're using a non-probability method, how will you avoid bias and ensure a representative sample? Because as we looked earlier, a non-probability sampling method is the most used, because it is the other one is hard to achieve. Probability method is hard to achieve, so we go with non-probability method. But in this case, you have to ensure that the representative the sample you choose should be representative of the population, things like that. So meaning with the sampling method, you either choose probability none, like if you go with none, you either choose probability sampling or non-probability sampling, because those are the sampling methods we have. You choose any of them, and with each of them you have to make sure that you for non-probability you have to make sure that the sample you select, your sample is representative of your population. And if you take probability sampling, then you should make sure that each person that is randomly selected actually participates, and you have to look for ways of ensuring a high response rate. So that is with the sampling method. So having come up with a, because we've looked at like we've looked at selecting a data collection method or a data collection instrument. Having selected data collection method instrument, either questionnaire or interview or whatever, just as we looked at them in the previous video, then you come up with data collection method from the data collection methods that we know, probability and non-probability. And then having finished that, then you come to data management. How are you going to manage your data? So it is also important to create a data management plan for organizing and storing your data. So you have to consider, will you need to transcribe interviews or perform data entry observations? You should anonymize and safeguard any sensitive data and make sure it is backed up regularly. And then keeping your data well organized will help you save time when it comes to analyzing it, and it can also help other researchers validate and add to your findings, just because they are organized so they can easily be understood. So then step number 6 is you need to decide on your data analysis strategies. Remember, here we are looking at how to create a research design, and we say the research design is data strategies that will help you in your research. So having collected the data and considered which instrument and method of sampling method you use, and how you manage your data management, then you go on data analysis. So you need to decide on your data analysis strategies. So on its own, raw data can't answer your research question, and the last step of designing your research is planning how you will analyze the data. So we have quantitative data analysis, and in quantitative research, you will most likely use some form of statistics analysis when you're using quantitative analysis. And with statistics, you can summarize your sample data, make estimates, and then test hypotheses. So if you're using descriptive statistics, because we know that quantitative deals with numerals like figures, numbers, and one way of analyzing numbers is by using statistics methods. So when you're using statistics methods, they vary. There is descriptive statistics, whereby you can summarize your sample data in terms of the distribution of the data, for example, frequency of each score on a test, the central tendency of data. That is, for example, you look at the mean to describe the average score. Mean. These are terms of statistics. Frequency, which is a term of statistics. Mean, that which describes average. That is, you're studying the central tendency of the data. And then the variability of data. That is when you're looking at the standard deviation to describe how spread out the scores are. So these are things to do with statistics. Then the specific calculations you can do will depend on the level of measurement of your variables. So things like that. And then that is with descriptive statistics. And if you're looking at inferential statistics, then you can make estimates about the population based on your simple data. And you can also test hypotheses about a relationship between variables. So that is inferential statistics. Then regression and correlation, they test for, excuse me, regression and correlation tests look for associations between two or more variables, while comparison tests, just such as a t-test and ANOVAs, these look for differences in the outcomes of the different groups. So all of this is just to do with quantitative data analysis. Yeah. So your choice of statistical test depends on various aspects of your research design, including the type of variables you're dealing with and then the distribution of your data. So that is to do with quantitative research, with quantitative data analysis. And then when it comes to qualitative data analysis, in qualitative research, your data will usually be very dense with information and ideas. So instead of summing it up in numbers, you will need to comb through the data in details, interpret its meaning, identify patterns, and extract the parts that are most relevant to your research question. So 12 of the most common approaches to doing this are the thematics analysis and then the discourse analysis. So like I said, we shall be looking at these data analysis methods in details in time to come. So thematics analysis, it focuses on the content of the data and involves coding and organizing the data to identify key themes. Whereas discourse analysis, it so focuses on putting data in context and involves analyzing different levels of communication, let's say language, structure, tone, among others. So there are many other ways of analyzing qualitative data depending on the aims of your research. And to get a sense of potential approaches, try reading some qualitative research papers in your field that help you see the different approaches you can use in your data analysis. But there are other methods of data analysis, like we saw them previously, the other videos. So far that is it all concerning how to create a research design. That is it all. This video is going to end there, to end